You can have, for example, an entire spacecraft 3D. That spacecraft, many people have observed this, we've had this happen on our expeditions, can then fold into space-time, and all you see is a sphere, a red pulsing sphere or orange or whatever. And then it can unfold back out. So this confuses people because they said, which came first, or was the sphere part of it? I said, well, it's all part and parcel of it enfolding within space-time. And this is why you have so many unusual manifestations. Often we'll have a contact event where we'll be sitting, we're meditating out under the stars, and there'll be a brilliant burst of light right in the center of this circle, maybe 4 feet above the ground. It's usually right around or above the puja table where I do the Sanskrit Vedic meditation. And it will burst so brightly that even with your eyes closed, you'll see your eyelid veins, and everyone is sort of permeated with a consciousness light. So the light is actually imbued with consciousness almost at a celestial fine level, and people are just awakened into a state of amazing consciousness. That's happened many times. Another time up north of Phoenix, out near the National Forest, a craft came in, we were in meditation, and literally I was looking just at the right point because I was told mentally look up to the behind me. So I actually had to look like this. At that instant, it looked like, the heavens had been rent asunder. It looked like there was a parting of space. And in that parting of space, this beautiful blue ship appeared and suffused the entire team for just an instant in this blue-white light. It lit up the entire desert. I mean, it was, and everyone saw this, of course. It was brilliant. And so, you can have everything from a full 3D to events like that happen and come and go very quickly. Yeah. And then, of course, the teleportation right onto the site of ET beings. Now, interestingly, that goes all the way from physical bodies, and they're walking around, and we'll be meditating, you'll hear them walk and they'll touch you. You look, there's nothing there. Well, it's because they don't have to be fully visible, be sort of cloaked, and they'll go around and do energy work with people, but you hear them walking. This happens almost every expedition that I conduct. And then you have this other really, amazing phenomenon where the ETs will control the environment. So we'll be sitting out in a remote area, and the ET craft will be partially in this dimension. So much so that you can almost, it sounds like an echo when you speak, like you're bouncing off the walls, but it's clear air. Yeah. And in one instance, I remember we were up in Joshua Tree in the center of the park, and it was about 38 degrees that night. It was quite cold. And this energy field manifested around us that was extraterrestrial, very subtle, and we had this echoey effect as we spoke, and you could see subtle energies, almost like celestial level of energy around us, and beings moving, but not quite 3D. And the temperature went up to 69 degrees from 38. So it went up 31 degrees in a short amount of time. You could walk 20 yards outside our circle and it was freezing. So it did a controlled environment. People were literally pulling their jackets off. There are so many ways that these happen. One of my favorite and sort of whimsical things was up on Blanca Peak in southern Colorado. And a member of our team, as we were doing the meditation, silently asked the ETs if they could just use the Big Dipper, the 4 stars that are in the dipper and then the 3 in the handle, and just turn them on and off in a kind of a code. He was a mathematician and computer guy. And sure enough, as soon as those thoughts left his brain to the ETs, in a crystal clear sky, we were up at 9,000 or 10,000 feet, each star, and sometimes 2 at a time, would go on and off signaling to us. And this went on for 23 minutes. So we have unbelievable amount of footage of this sort of thing. It's very subtle. Yeah. So what is that? They were communicating in code. It was a sequence that we recorded. When we got back to our condos late at night, 3 in the morning, all the clocks in all the units were flashing some number that was related to that pattern. really unusual, higher consciousness, trans-dimensional manifestations. It's really quite beautiful how this all unfolds. At one time at Mount Shasta, we're in meditation, and this gets into the Vedic concept of name and form, where the thought sound component can manifest the object. It's called name and form. So the word for water in Sanskrit is akshmaniyam. At a certain level of consciousness and vibration, you can manifest water. But the ETs have technologies as well as innate abilities to do this. So we're sitting in a circle in the national forest. All of a sudden, we hear this tone that comes through from southwest to northeast, headed towards Mount Shasta. And everyone hears it. The eyes were closed. And what everyone saw in their mental image was a sort of gray metallic sphere that was consciousness and ET, zip, 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 like a string of pearls moving through the circle at ground level or above the ground, but at our level where we're sitting in the chairs. Very unusual. We have a tape recording of that signal that was moved through. So there's almost an infinite number of ways that civilizations that are interstellar and are at that level of technology and consciousness can manifest and interface. So it can be in thought, it can be in light, it can be in matter, it can be in natural phenomena. One of the things that happened about a year and a half ago, we were at Joshua Tree National Park, and this sort of thing has happened many times. It looks like we have a aircraft coming in on landing approach with landing lights. So we're looking at it. To me, it felt like it wasn't human. But as it got closer, you heard the jet engines, all that. But suddenly, in a crystal clear sky, it gets right above us and dematerializes. Now, no one was filming it because everybody assumed this is obviously an airplane going into Palm Springs or Orange County or LAX. In reality, they were masquerading as a jet, but they weren't. And this has happened multiple times. We've also had a lot of phenomenon with weather, where we'll be doing our CE5 contact and we'll have a cloud appear. And then the cloud, it's really windy, it never moves, and you'll start seeing objects light up around the edge of it, moving around. Now this happened in Arizona for about 45 minutes that we videotaped, and it was a cloud that they had created to keep around the craft while they were meditating and connecting with us. And everyone saw this. So that's what you're dealing with, and that's what you have to prepare for mentally, and really do a reality check at every step of what you're doing, because if you're making contact in a pure-hearted way, they're going to come. And they're going to come, however, in ways you may not be expecting. So you have to almost suspend your prejudices and just observe and be interactive, as opposed to wanting to impose your beliefs on what the ET civilizations might do.
Right, just be open.
Be open. And that's hard for people because we all have our own predetermined ideas.
Exactly. Wow. And Dr. Greer, some people suggest that apparitions are holograms from other dimensions. Can you go into that a little bit deeper?
I know people who work in classified projects that have the ability to stage things using very advanced, generation beyond what people can imagine, holographic technologies. An ET civilization can similarly do that, although generally they don't have to stage anything. They simply can present in, it's not a hologram, it looks almost like a hologram or something almost astral that you can see, but it's actually them just appearing partially in 3D for security reasons or so that you're not scared. The big trick here is also realizing that 70 years and trillions of dollars in R&D in classified projects have enabled, and we haven't touched the surface on this, of what the intelligence community and contractors that are in unacknowledged special access projects can simulate. So that's one of the problems. So you have to know that whatever you think
Yeah.
can be done, go way past that. Ben Rich, the head of the Lockheed Skunk Works, he said, look, anything that you've seen or can imagine from Star Trek or Star Wars, we have already done it sitting out in the desert. He wasn't talking about Area 51. He was talking about the Cube and the underground facility for the Lockheed Skunk Works out in the high desert of California. And I think that there can be deceptive operations because they can stage, the humans can stage things that look very extraterrestrial. And then just add another layer of this is that many people have confused interdimensional beings with extraterrestrials that can be transdimensional. So again, we have humans, we have 3D, we have classified projects that can simulate almost anything. Now let's add to that the fact that most people conflate extraterrestrial vehicles and manifestations, let's say, with, they don't know, most people, that there are classified technologies that are the anti-gravity craft and stuff. This is mostly what's in the news. There aren't ET ones they're showing ours, staging things. And then there's a whole bunch of other phenomenon. If you want to hear one of the weirdest things that's true, a man who worked in the Cube at the Lockheed Skunk Works described to me an area where they had an electronic device that people could connect to and that would take them into not another planet, but into another dimension and see some horrifying boogum creature and pull it into 3D and it'd be running around the lab. I know other scientists outside the Skunk Works have done this through very high voltage systems where they cross into these other dimensions.
Wow.
So this is where a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. We have to have enough knowledge of the cosmology to have discernment to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been lost in this discussion because it's a little bit detailed.
Yeah.
But if you just remember, there's ET, there's human that can simulate the ET, and there are another whole category. And most of what, say, is talked about in the UFO culture is a gamish of all three without any discernment. And I think we have to reach that discernment or we're going to be hopelessly confused, but more importantly, can be deceived. All right? And I think a lot of this obfuscation and confusion has been deliberate because knowledge, as the Vedas say, knowledge is the greatest purifier. When you have the knowledge, it can purify and clarify. And I think this obfuscation is not helpful.